Good morning, fifth grade. All right, we're going to hop right into our lesson. We only have one lesson for today and tomorrow because after this lesson, there is a diagnostic checkpoint. So that means you will be doing a page that sees if you are understanding what we're doing so far in this chapter. So hopefully you do know what you're doing so that we can move on and finish the rest of the chapter. Okay, so today we're talking about comparing and ordering fractions and mixed numbers. Okay, so we're just trying to see what order fractions are in from smallest to largest or from least to greatest. Okay, it's a little bit harder when you do not have the same denominator, but when you start thinking of fractions as pieces and you think of them as pictures in your head, you can understand a little bit more of how much it's taking up. Okay, although there's a much more mathematical way to do it, and that is finding the least common denominator, which is something that we haven't talked about yet, but we will. But we're going to play with it a little bit today, even though we're not going to call it the least common denominator. All right, so look on the top of page 420. Your lesson's on page 420 today. We have Linda and Jason with us today. Okay, so it says comparing and ordering fractions and mixed numbers. How do you compare and order fractions? All right, let's do the little warm up on the top. See where it says warm up? All right, it says find the missing numbers to make the fractions equivalent. Do we remember what equivalent means? Equal. Okay, so remember, we make fractions equal by either multiplying the numerator and denominator by the same number or dividing the numerator and denominator by the same number. Okay, number 1, 1/3 equals blank over 27. Okay, well, what did we do to 3 to get 27? Multiply it by 9. So that means we need to do the same thing to the top. So 1 times 9 is 9. So 1/3 equals 9/27. All right, number 2, 7 over 28 equals 1 over blank. Okay, what did we do to 7 to get 1? Divide it by 7. So that means we need to do the same thing to the bottom. 28 divided by 7 equals 4. Okay, so 7/28 equals 1/4. All right, and number 3, 18 over blank equals 3 over 5. Okay, so what did we do to 18 to get 3? Divide it by 6. Okay, so what divided by 6 equals 5? 30. Okay, 5 times 6 is 30. Okay, so 18 over 30 equals 3 over 5. All right, are we all warmed up? Okay, so how do you compare and order fractions? How do you put them in the right order from least to greatest? All right, so how can you compare 2/6 and 2/3? Well, we have Linda and Jason. Let's see what they thought. They're thinking of 2 different ways that you can compare 2/6 and 2/3. So let's look inside of Linda's bubble and see what she says. She says the numerators are the same. The top numbers are the same. Okay, and each 6th is smaller than each 3rd. If you have a line or a circle divided into 6 pieces and you have another line or circle divided into 3 pieces, which one has the bigger pieces? Right, the one divided into thirds. Okay, so she said, oh, well, the tops are the same number. So I have 2 out of 3 and 2 out of 6. Well, the thirds are a lot smaller, a lot bigger than the sixth. So 2/3 is going to be greater than 2/6. Okay? So look at the picture on the notebook pad next to her. Okay? So if you have a hard time understanding and you need to see it visually, you could do the same thing. Divide lines on top of each other into the number of the denominator and circle or shade in the ones that are the numerator, and you can see, yes, 2/3 is definitely more than 2/6. Okay? So old Jason over here, he says, I know that 2/6 is less than 1/2 because 3/6 is 1/2. And 2/3 is greater than 1/2. So I know, or he knows, that 2/6 is less than 2/3. Okay, so he was thinking of it as like the half being his benchmark, looking at the half and saying, okay, so I know that 2/3 is more than a half, and I know that 2/6 is less than a half. Okay, so therefore 2/6 is less than 2/3. Okay, so when fractions have a common denominator, that means that their denominator is the same. That makes it a little bit easier to figure out if something is bigger or smaller or greater or less than another fraction if their denominator is the same, because you're taking it out of the same number of pieces. Okay, so look under example A and you'll see how you can find a common denominator. All right, it says compare 5/8 and 4/6. Find a common denominator to compare. Well, if I look at 8 and I look at 6, I know that both of those numbers can be multiplied to get 24. Okay, 8 can be multiplied by 3 and 6 can be multiplied by 4 in order to get 24. So if I want to do that, what do I have to do to the top and the bottom of both of those fractions? Multiply them by the same number. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 5/8 times 3, both the numerator and the denominator, so I can get a common denominator. So 5 times 3, 15. 8 times 3, 24. So 15 24ths. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to 4/6, but I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by 4 to get 24. So 4/6, look at this example underneath example A. 4/6 times 4 and times 4 comes out to 16 24ths. So which one is bigger? Which one's greater? 16 24ths is going to be bigger than 15 24ths. So that means that 4/6 is bigger, greater than 5/8. Okay, so we found the same common denominator to find out which one is bigger. Now that one was so close that we kind of had to find a common denominator like that in order to see which one was bigger. They were so close to each other. All right, so another way to find a common denominator, look underneath another way. It says multiply the denominators. Okay, so 8 times 6 is 48. Okay, so use 48 as the common denominator. You can always multiply the denominators by each other to find out what you should do for the common denominator. Okay, sometimes it's going to be pretty big. Okay, so 6 times 8 is 48. So put 48 on the bottom of both of them. Okay, and then you're going to multiply the top by whatever number you multiplied the bottom by to get the denominator. So 8 times 6 is 48. So 5 times 6 is 30. Because remember, you have to do the same thing to the top and the bottom to make the fractions equivalent. And then 4/6, you're going to multiply both of them by 8. So 4 times 8 is 32. 6 times 8 is 48. Okay, so is 30 over 48 less than 32 over 48? Yes, so that means 5/8 is less than 4/6. Okay? Is your head spinning? Okay, so there are more than one way. There are more than one way to find, or there is more than one way to find the order of fractions. Okay, you can either look at it and figure it out mentally, or you can find the common denominator and make sure that you do the same thing to the top and the bottom when you're finding the common denominator in a set of fractions or a group of fractions. Okay, look at example B on page 421. Example B on page 421. It says write 1/9, 2/9, 1/12, and 1/3 in order from least to greatest. Okay, so when you're ordering something from least to greatest, now there's 4 fractions that you're ordering from least to greatest. Okay, so you have to figure out which one is the smallest, which one is the largest. And remember, when the denominator is large, that means that the pieces are smaller. Okay, so that doesn't mean that that fraction is larger. It means that that fraction is smaller, or the denominator is smaller, because the pieces are smaller the more that you have. Okay, so you might have to do a few steps in order to find out, to find out from least to greatest. Okay, so we know that 1/12 is less than 1/9. Look at example B. Because 12 is smaller pieces than 9, and if there's only 1 out of it, 1 out of 12 is going to be less than 1 out of 9. So because the numerators are the same, and 12 is greater than 9, so that means that 12 has smaller pieces than 9. Because the denominators are the same and 1 is less than 2. Okay, so we know that at least 1/12 is smaller than 1/9. Okay, so then 2/9 is obviously going to be after 1/9, because 2 out of 9 pieces is going to be less than 1 out of 9 pieces, or greater than 1 out of 9 pieces. So we know we have 1/3 or 1/12, 1/9, 2/9. Okay, so we have to find out, is 2/9 greater than or less than 1/3? All right, so 2/9 and 1/3. So we can find a common denominator. We know that 3 and 9 can be a common denominator. So what do we have to do to the 1/3 to make it into 9ths? We need to multiply the numerator and the denominator both by 3. Okay, so 3/9 is what you're going to come out with. So is 2/9 greater than or less than 3/9? Less than. So 1/3 is going to be the largest number. Okay, so look at the bottom of example B. It says 1/12 is less than 1/9, which is less than 2/9, which is less than 1/3. So that's the order in from beginning to end. All right, so what about mixed numbers? Remember, a mixed number is a whole number and a fraction. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is look at the whole number. Okay, if you have 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, obviously the whole number, if the whole number is 2 or 3, it's going to be greater than 1 or 2, even if the fraction is bigger. Okay, so you look at the whole number first, and that's the one that's going to be first, whichever one the whole number is bigger. Okay, but what if the whole number is the same? What if they're all ones with fractions? Okay, so you're going to look at the whole number, but then you're going to ignore it for a little while and just look at the fractions. So put the fractions in order if all of the whole numbers are the same. Okay, so let's look at example C. All right, so it says write 1 and 1/4, 1 and 1/6, and 2 and 1/8 in order from least to greatest. Okay, well, looking right there, we don't even have to compare the 2 and 1/8. We know that that one's going to be the largest because the whole number is larger. So now we just have to find out which one is smaller, 1/4, or 1/6. Okay, so step 1, compare the whole number parts first. 1 is less than 2, so 1 and 1/4 is going to be less than 2 and 1/8. So we don't even have to worry about 2 and 1/8 anymore. That's the biggest. Okay, step 2. When the whole numbers are the same, compare the fraction parts. Okay, so 1/6 is less than 1/4 because the numerators are the same and the denominators are different. And 1 out of 6 pieces is smaller than 1 out of 4 pieces because the denominator with 6, the pieces are smaller, okay, because there's more of them. All right, so 1 and 1/6 is going to be less than 1 and 1/4. Okay, so the order of the numbers are 1 and 1/6 is less than 1 and 1/4, which is less than 2 and 1/8. Okay, so I know that this might seem a little bit confusing, okay, but you just have to do the steps. Okay, I have one example right here. If I'm trying to find out which one is bigger, 1/2 or 2/3, okay, or which one. So I'm going to find a common denominator, okay? I know that 2 and 3 both go into 6. That's also the denominators multiplied by each other, okay? So 1/2, I'm going to multiply both of them by 3 to get 3/6. 2/3, I'm going to multiply both of them by 2 to get 4/6. So which one is larger? 4 out of 6 is larger than 3 out of 6. So that means 3/6 is greater, I did it wrong. 3/6 is less than 4/6. So what does that mean? That means that 1/2 is also less than 2/3. Okay? All right. So for today's homework, for Thursday's homework, you're going to do, I have it written down, you're going to do page 422, practice A, odd, okay? And then for tomorrow, or unless you're ambitious and you want to get it done today, for tomorrow, we're going to do page 425, and it's called the diagnostic checkpoint. Remember, diagnosing, when you go to the doctor, says what's wrong with you or what's right with you, okay? So a diagnostic checkpoint, we're just in the middle of the chapter. We're going to find out, are you lost or do you get what we've learned so far? Okay, so we're going to find out. All right, so page 425, I want you to do the whole thing but odd, okay? So 425 odd. And that is for your homework for today and tomorrow. I'm not going to grade them, but if you passing them in will get you a quiz grade. Will get you a good quiz grade if you actually send them in, okay? And I know that you might not get them all right, but I want to see that you got them all done and that you tried, okay? Remember, you can go back and look in your book for explanations. Also, don't forget the website that I told you about. That's actually really, really, really good. It's also an app, okay? Khan Academy. And if you ever need something explained in a different way, and they have some practice problems, this is an awesome free website or app for you to use. It's awesome. I use it all the time. It's really, really, really great. Okay. All right. I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye.